Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I'm here with Dani Hatch, and it's the beginning of September, Labor Day weekend, I believe, and movie stuff happening. Lots of stuff happening. Actually,
Kind of.
funny enough, well, see, that is kind of funny. We're going to talk about this more in a second. I think as of right now, and maybe this is kind of a tie-in to our previous episode, but right now I think back to school is kind of the bigger thing in both of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just started my first face-to-face class in about 2 years on Monday, and so I'm back on campus in front of actual students, which just seems weird after spending so much time on Zoom and online. But
Yep.
Dani, how was your first week of school so far?
Yeah, first week was great. I'm definitely getting that sense from a lot of the teachers. I've been lucky to have a couple classes on campus because, with a lot of film stuff, you need to actually be handling equipment in person,
a little
working
more
with a team,
hands-on.
right? Yeah.
Right.
But in a lot of my other classes, professors will be like wide eyes, like, this is my first time being in front of students live face to face in 2 years, and we're all just figuring it out together. But I think there's kind of this, I don't know, reassuring camaraderie in that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
understanding, a lot of
Right.
forgiveness, for the circumstance. We're all kind of in it together. So I
That makes
feel
sense.
you there too. And I feel a little intimidated, like being in class all day long, because I haven't done that in a while. I've done a lot of the Zoom
Yeah.
calls and everything too. So I'm a little tired, but I'm, great classes. I'm feeling really great about this semester. So I hope you're
Good.
feeling good about your classes.
So far, so good. Yeah,
Good.
we'll have to see. Hopefully, that the film department has some good things happening for you. And in the
Yeah.
meantime, there is a little bit of stuff happening in the actual movie film world. We got a few news items and some stuff coming up in the next couple weeks, right?
Yeah, so kind of why we say there's sort of things going on right now. There aren't a lot of new releases, but there's a lot of fun things going on during this lull, right? And a huge thing for September that I'm seeing here in Utah is there are a lot of conventions going on. So there's this one that's going to be next weekend, September 9th through the 11th. That's Phenomicon. So it's like paranormal activity kind of stuff. So it's going on in Vernal, which, shout out to the hometown there. Because the Uinta Basin has a lot of fun things there, like Skinwalker Ranch and, places like that. A little kind of creepy. It's desert town, so there's a lot of fun stuff out there. So I think it's a great location for it. And it's not necessarily my kind of thing. I don't know if it's that I don't believe it and I don't want to waste my time, or I'm scared that something will happen because I'm cynical. You know what I mean? Like,
I do. I do.
I kind of sneer at it a little bit, but I'm also too chicken to offer that opportunity of being proven wrong, So I
There you go.
probably won't be attending, but something I am looking forward to, and hopefully I will be able to attend, is FanX, which is going to be the following weekend, the 16th through the 18th. And FanX, for me as a teen, was like just huge. I would go with my best friend like every year, and it's just such a fun time. I like it a lot. I don't know. I have a lot of fun meet and greet experiences. I did the Napoleon Dynamite dance back in 7th grade, so I had a Vote for Pedro shirt. And that year, John Heder was there at, I think Comic-Con was kind of more the name back then, right?
I don't know if you can legally say that, but we'll
I know.
we'll overlook it for right
I'll
now.
cut it out. I'll bleep it. I'll bleep it. But he was there, so I got my shirt signed. But this guy in full aviator gear came up behind me, grabbed me by the shoulders. It's like, is Napoleon here? And it turns out it was Efren Ramirez, and he kind of spontaneously showed up, and I got my shirt signed by Pedro as well. So that
Very
was,
nice.
just all these fun experiences we've done. We've gotten pictures taken and dressing up and seeing all the vendors. Like, it's kind of a fun nerd gathering, And I think especially in Utah we have our nerd culture here, so it's fun to kind of let loose and be a dork for a couple days.
Utah is a prime location for that kind of event. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
there's a huge pop culture following in Utah and kind of Salt Lake City area. I've been to FanX / Comic-Con, several times. It's been a while since, I'm trying to remember the last one I actually attended, because I've gone both as a fan, and I've gone. I remember going and covering it for when I was working on the KJS movie show, and yeah, it's a fun time. And one of the things I actually enjoyed the most about it was that I'm speaking in the past tense here. One of the things I enjoyed the most was just as a photographer, it's just a gold mine. Because, especially if you love people watching, and if you're like, I think a lot of the Comic-Con people are kind of a little more shy, maybe a little bit more reserved, and so it's kind of a fun opportunity to get be a little more outgoing and kind of get over some of your social reservations and stuff. And I remember just taking pictures of all kinds of crazy people in different outfits and stuff. And I didn't have a Napoleon Dynamite encounter, but I met Lou Ferrigno one year.
Oh, cool.
The original Incredible Hulk, and met a couple others. I don't know. I do have to admit, though, that I am a little bit conflicted about whether to attend this year, whether just my, and it's not even a COVID thing, I mean, obviously I think that might have more of an impact than people assume, just because, I think that this was kind of coming together when we kind of felt like, hey, we're free and clear now.
But now
vaccine's doing its job. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that has an impact. But for me personally, there's more of kind of a little bit of a been there, done that feel. Just because I don't get the sense that it's not as much about breaking news so much as it is kind of similar to the routine that's played out before, where it's fun to see people dressed up, you see people in their costumes. There are an assortment of pop culture related celebrities, and after you've done it a few times, I'm not feeling the same drive to go back and do it again. So that's kind of where I feel conflicted about it. But no, I mean, if you haven't ever been, absolutely go. I think it's a lot of fun, especially if you're, because I'm not a cosplayer or anything myself, but I think that if that's kind of a part of your creative expression, then I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, of course you go to something like this. But even just from kind of a photographer's perspective, my motivation hasn't felt as keen in recent years, and so I don't know. We'll see.
So you feel like you're kind of seeing a lot of the same stuff?
Yeah.
I think it does depend on who comes.
True.
That's always like a huge factor if it's, someone new who you haven't met before.
Yeah.
And
well, and to be fair, part of this might be because I'm still a little shell-shocked from my failed attempt to meet Bruce Campbell 7 years ago. I went almost exclusively because I wanted to, meet him and get his autograph and stuff, and wasn't able to pull it off. And so I don't know. Maybe it's just the lingering disappointment I still have to get over.
You have resentful feelings towards FanX.
Bruce, you broke my heart. I think, and to be fair, I believe he was there. He just didn't arrive until I had to leave.
Oh no, it wasn't meant to be. Aw.
Yeah. But life goes on. So
I guess.
Yeah. So what else is happening?
Yeah. So, in addition to that, there's not a lot of new releases right now, but there's a lot coming out about movies that we get to look forward to once we hit, the big holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that, right? And
Right.
So a big trailer that dropped that I feel like there's kind of a lot of interesting buzz in how that all worked out and just how it's being received, but the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer,
Right.
which is highly anticipated because the last one ended on such a cliffhanger of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, maybe this is a spoiler, but, just everything's kind of in chaos for Peter Parker right now. And so,
Right.
We're all anxiously...
It came out like 2 years ago. I think you're fine. Wasn't it 2 years ago? When did Far From Home come out?
Ooh, oh my goodness. I don't know, because last year was a
Was it-
blackout year, so I don't even know how long anymore.
So it was 2 years ago.
Wow.
Because it was after Endgame,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And Endgame was in the spring, and then Far From Home came out in the summer,
That sounds right.
and then and then nothing came out last year. That's right. Yeah. So it's been over 2 years since Far From Home came out.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, like,
Okay.
if you haven't seen what's going on in the trailer, like, I don't know how you can't come across this trailer. Although I think you've avoided it as best as you can until I made you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a little, if you detect a little tension in this episode. No, and I should say, I'm just generally not a fan of trailers in general. I mean, a
Yeah.
really good trailer is fine. What I hate is what trailers have become, which is, it seems like 90% of the ones I watch tell 90% of the story. And
Yeah.
so, like, multiple twists and turns, I'm trying to think of specific examples, just, but you basically know, you're introduced to a couple characters at the beginning of the trailer, and by the end of the trailer, you already know that one of them is going to turn out to be, a bad guy or something. And I hate that, and even for the ones that don't play out the entire plot, the highlights are just something I'd rather see in person.
That's a good
The
point.
one I always think about, and this is kind of an old example now, so I probably ought to get something more updated, but I remember years ago seeing the trailer to, it was Jurassic World, and they had the clip where they dangle the shark over the tank, and then the huge, whatever that dinosaur was, jumps out of the water and eats it whole. And I thought, oh, well, that's a cool scene that I wish I would have just seen in the movie, because I think, yeah, that's really fun for the trailer and it gets people excited, but imagine if you hadn't seen that and then you saw it in the movie for the first time and didn't know that this monstrous thing was going to come up out of the water. And so I hate the way that trailers kind of spoil too much of that stuff. And so I generally avoid them when I can.
Yeah. No, and I feel you.
Except, yeah, except when my podcast partner twists my arm and makes me watch the Spider-Man trailer. But I do have thoughts.
Well,
so.
it's technically the teaser, so maybe like the full trailer will end up being like that. But I think they did a very good job in this one, where it seems like everything that happens in the trailer happens within the first like 20 minutes, maybe.
Oh, does it?
Well, it looks
so that
like
big, that big spoiler at the end, that big reveal at the end.
maybe a little later on, but like.
Oh my
But they
goodness.
look like things where it's like it's starting conflict, not like the actual finale. But maybe it will be, and then you can be angry with me, and that's okay.
All right, I will reserve. I'm gonna put that on pause. But so tell me what did you? I mean, having watched this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, so quickly for context, end of Far From Home.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't watched it, it's been 2 years, so tough beans. So Peter Parker's identity is revealed by Jonah Jameson, who is played by J.K. Simmons, the original actor from the original Sam Raimi trilogy.
Woo-hoo.
So now there's kind of like this overlap between the Sam Raimi and the Tom Holland stuff. And so it seemed like to me that this teaser was mostly dealing with the fallout of, okay, well, Peter Parker's identity has been revealed, and what impact is that going to have on his life, and what's he going to do about it, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's a great way to sum it up. And of course, this is bringing in a whole bunch of other people. Like we see Doctor Strange coming in. He's kind of going to help resolve things, right? Or maybe not. We'll see.
Or make it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
No, but I think it's an interesting trailer to drop during this time after all the Marvel shows dealing with the multiple timelines, multiverse kind of stuff. And I think
right.
for me personally, I think Spider-Man is perfect for this if Marvel's wanting to continue down this path, because we have 3 Spider-Men, And
no, that's a good point.
so I think, and so like the thing that I've been really hoping for is to get all of them together in this, and that's what you see everywhere. There's so many memes. It's hilarious.
Even Andrew Garfield?
Okay. I wish we had more Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield is my Spider-Man, okay? And I know that's an unpopular opinion, but Andrew Garfield is an
And rightfully so.
amazing actor. Okay, but you've seen him in other stuff too. He's incredible. And so
oh yeah, no, he's
and
good.
here's the thing.
Doesn't make him a good Spider-Man.
Okay, but him and Emma Stone, that's Oh, maybe I was just too much of a teen girl during the time that came out, but that was like the best and saddest relationship I've ever seen in my life, and I wish I got more of it, but I never will, and whatever. So, so that's why I would love to see him come back, and I think, we have a lot more retrospectives, like, what worked and didn't work with Tobey Maguire, what didn't work with Andrew Garfield, and now put him in the mix with Tom Holland. I think it'd be brilliant. So I really hope that's where they're going with this movie. But I like how in the trailer it shows hints with the villains.
Right. Well, because that's the big clue, right?
Yes.
They're teasing villains from, and I mean, it's in
From
the
these
trailer,
other
so
ones.
I think we could
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
We have, Doc Ock from the Raimi, from the second movie, and he's apparently going to be in this movie, and Willem Dafoe, we can hear him kind of laughing, and we see a little Green Goblin, whatever those little grenade things
Yeah,
were that he
yeah.
threw around, and you said, you heard Michael Keaton's voice and stuff. So yeah, no, I mean, I think it could be fun. I'm definitely intrigued to see what happens with it, and honestly, I've really enjoyed the Tom Holland movies in general, so I'm happy
Yeah.
to see what they do with this one. Now, I'm assuming you saw Into the Spider-Verse, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say, like, this
It
wouldn't
has
even
been
be the
done.
first time.
But it wasn't done with Andrew Garfield.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
No,
Maybe we ought to move off for this.
no.
Because I get the feeling that Andrew Garfield's name is going to be dropped at least a half dozen more times before the end of this episode, and you're just going to be looking for excuses.
Oh my gosh.
But
Okay, I'll drop it. Into the Spider-Verse did do a great job with that same
Yeah.
kind of concept. And, I mean, just, there are so many, ways you could go with that, artistically, story-wise, future spin-offs possibly. Like, there were just so many great choices with that, and it was a fabulous movie. So I hope that's what we see here. I wonder, there's all this excitement for it. Not all fans are going to be pleased in the end. Like me, we'll see. So, I don't know. What I find really interesting with this trailer is how there was so much going around last month about how Marvel was like refusing to put out the trailer or whatever, and then this last week it's leaked, and now it's out in the open, and there have been so many memes about that as well. So I think it was very interesting. I wonder post Endgame if Marvel's just doing all they can to stay afloat and relevant, because like that was huge, Endgame and everything leading up to it. Like it was probably the biggest movie feat in this generation, in this last decade, right?
yeah, oh, for sure.
So
Yeah, no, it's. I don't want to go off on another tangent, but I mean, I think about how I find it significant that Endgame and Rise of Skywalker came out the same year, because, and obviously there was a 10-year buildup of movies leading to Endgame, and so there was a lot more involved in it. But I mean, Rise of Skywalker was supposed to be the conclusion of another one of only 3 Star Wars trilogies. Like I guess part of the reason that I tie them together is because there was that moment at the end of Rise of Skywalker where it felt like they were trying to do the on your left thing in Endgame.
yeah,
And to me, it felt so lame. Just like, oh, really? You're going to try to do the same thing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you haven't earned it. You just haven't earned it. But like I said, that's kind of a different tangent that we can save for another episode. But yeah, no, I mean, I've said this before. I've enjoyed Marvel stuff continually. I've enjoyed the stuff that they've done since Endgame, but there's definitely a feeling like I'm kind of ready for something else. I'm not really just flipping out over the whole multiverse thing. It's interesting. I hope that they keep it accessible enough, because if they go too far down the technical rabbit hole, I think they'll lose a lot of people. And without the big core thing tying everything together like they've had that first 10 years, I think it could be easy for people to kind of just get on with their lives, you know, in a moviegoer sense. But
Yeah.
and that might be happening anyway.
Yeah,
but,
no, I'm definitely feeling that way too. I feel a little Marvel fatigue, but it's funny seeing how I quickly got sucked back in through all the the hype, the withholding, but then the sudden release and all the buzz around it. So
Oh, Danny, it's because you're young. It's because you're young and your hopes have not been crushed. You still have you still have optimism and no, I'm only
That's
half
probably
kidding.
it.
I'm only half kidding.
That's gotta be it. Yeah, no, there's some
no.
truth there.
No, it's still fun stuff. I mean, movie magic is still magic. You know, it's
Yeah.
great, but
Yeah, but
you know,
I think it all feels kind of like a marketing ploy, but very effective.
Yeah,
And
oh,
it's,
yeah.
and I'm interested to see what else Marvel is willing to do and what they have planned to stay, in people's lives instead of, letting them be released and move on, right?
yeah.
So, we'll see.
Okay, Danny, so you mentioned earlier that there weren't a whole lot of new releases, and unfortunately, as we know, this is just kind of the reality of this time of year, right? Because if something was really good, it would have come out in the summer because that's the big blockbusters, and we kind of still
True.
got a little bit of gap before the holiday movies, right? So right now, not a whole lot to talk about. Now, I do want to say that we are going to cover Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, but we haven't had a chance to see it yet, so we're going to have to put that one on hold for our dedicated viewers. I guess technically you could be watching this on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Hi, Mom.
But in the meantime, kind of an abbreviated review segment for this episode, because the only other one I have anything to mention about is Candyman. Now, you didn't see this one, right?
No, because I was looking at the releases coming out right now, and it's funny because I feel like it's like a horror pre-season, in September.
Yeah,
Not
right,
quite October,
right.
but you could be enjoying it through October, and that is not my cup of tea. So I haven't seen this one nor any of those other kind of movies that have been coming out.
Yeah, and see, I find that interesting too. I mean, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this one, but I think some of those elements are relevant here because this is definitely framed and presented as a horror movie, but by the end of it, it's not really a horror movie. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't, is what I'm saying. So
Okay.
at the end of the day, I'm not entirely surprised that this isn't presented as it's Halloween time, so here's your horror movie.
I see.
So Candyman is effectively a sequel. Okay, so you might be familiar. There was a Candyman in 1992, and it had a couple sequels of its own. And
I did not
this
know
movie
this.
is
Wow.
yeah. So this is an existing franchise. Now, I did not see the original Candyman because, kind of like you say, movies like this, kind of slasher horror type stuff, not really my thing, and so I typically haven't gone out of my way to see them unless I had a particular reason. And in the '90s, seeing Candyman wasn't a priority, but this one considers that first 1992 movie to be part of its universe. They actually refer to the events of that first movie. Now, there are a couple things that really had me interested in seeing this movie. One of which is this fact that it's set in Chicago. It actually kind of revolves around the old Cabrini Green projects,
Okay.
which was kind of a housing project, very, very notorious, and then in the time since has been demolished and gentrified, and that's actually kind of a theme of this new movie. The other reason that I was more particularly interested in seeing it was because Jordan Peele was involved, and he's the guy who did Get Out and Us a couple of years later. Now, I have to say, and maybe this explains a bit of the movie to me, but Peele was a co-writer on the movie and a producer for the movie. He did not direct it. Nia DaCosta is the director.
I see. So they wanted the name tied with it.
Well, I mean, it definitely feels like he's involved. Bottom line, it's not as good as those other movies. And I'm wondering if his more peripheral involvement is why. Because basically, it's about this kind of mythic slasher character that is like the recurring ghost of a man who was lynched back in the 19th century. And he kind of haunts this, housing project. So there was already kind of a social justice kind of a, that kind of theme in the first one. And again, like I said, I didn't see the first one, but it's definitely still kind of the same setup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the politics of this new one are much more on the surface, and at least based on what I'm gathering, and just watching this movie. So that's why I say it's a horror movie, but at times it feels like it's more interested in sending a political message. And to me, that kind of undercuts it, because there's some things I really like about this movie, like the tone, the soundtrack. It's not one of these horror movies that's just relying on jump scares and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some interesting and some effective horror movie atmosphere elements that are a lot of fun. And special effects are good and that kind of stuff. But there's also kind of like this more recurring political theme that by the time it builds up and kind of climaxes in the third act, almost to me feels like it overshadows the horror elements of the movie. And so it becomes more polarizing, where it's kind of one of those movies I feel like your takeaway is going to have more to do with your political leanings than how you felt about like the actual, whether it was a scary movie or not. And so
Yeah.
And it's hard to say too much without kind of giving away those fundamental elements, but it's definitely got some things I really like, but like the subtlety of the socially conscious messaging in Get Out and stuff is not present here. This one feels much more explicit, much more on the surface, and less tactful, I would say. And so if you really like Jordan Peele's stuff, I think you'll enjoy this, but maybe not as much as his previous efforts. And maybe that's because he wasn't in the director's chair, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
So is that a totally vague...
I mean, it's fine. I don't need a lot of details because, like I said, I'm probably not going to see it. The Quiet Place is like the furthest I got in horror. I didn't watch Get Out because that one looked creepy to me, even though my family, they were like, you have to watch it, it was so good, but I just I get stressed out with that stuff.
Sure. And like I said, that was why I wanted to see this. That my biggest interest in seeing this was, it's another Jordan Peele horror movie.
Yeah.
I really liked, Get Out was really good. Us wasn't as good, but I still, admired a lot of things about it. And so that's why I felt like, okay, I'll go try Candyman. And coming away from it, it's like, well, that felt a little bit more obvious in its messaging and more preoccupied with its messaging. And so it's got some of those, like I always give credit to horror movies that don't just rely on kind of cheap jump scares. And so I absolutely give this one the thumbs up in that regard. But it's not something I'm, I prefer Get Out a lot more. I thought Get Out was a lot better. Yeah. And that's about it for their movie reviews this episode. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now I heard a rumor that you actually followed through on a recommendation I made.
I did. Well, here's the thing. I always do what my teachers tell me to do. I'm a very, very good student.
Oh, no.
So I did my homework.
You consider me an authority figure?
Oh, Josh, I've learned a lot from you. So, no, and you're a teacher at my school. So, I mean, practically, I have to respect you to some degree in that regard.
Oh, you have so much to learn.
Oh, no, but I did. I watched Sing Street, especially after the recommendation you gave for it. And you know what? It was just, I have notes here, and my note just says, wow. No, but really, it was such a great movie. It was a little harder for me to get into than I thought it would be, but I think it's because like the way you described it, I thought, oh, this is gonna be so light and cheerful, but like there are some hard themes in it, and it was a
Yeah.
lot darker, and that might be like that foreign aspect to it, right?
Hmm.
There's kind of a stereotype with American and Hollywood films being just, very light and fluffy, and this one dealt with some very serious stuff.
Oh yeah, no, there's a very lighthearted thread through it,
True.
but part of what makes it so fun is because it's happening in this more difficult context. And
Yeah.
I didn't really elaborate on that when I was, talking about it in the last episode, but no, I mean this is happening during a real difficult time economically in Ireland back in the 80s, and the family, the kid who's putting the band together, his family's breaking apart.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really go into that, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it in spite of that.
Yeah, no, it was very good. And I think just like the stuff with school, I think they touched on some very good things because it's like a Catholic all boys school, right? And so there was some kind of
Right.
there are some stereotypes, some I don't know, questionable things with that, right? So it felt a little like Shawshank Redemption, kind of, with the school, and but like a teenage version of it. But like, oh man, it was kind of hard to see. But I loved like that song that's written in response to that situation, specifically to the school administrator. Like that was a powerful
Right.
moment. So it's kind of fun too, where these challenges are overcome through music in a very beautiful way, and the songs were fabulous. So I 100% agree with you on the soundtrack and the brothers' performance. The ending especially,
Right.
like that got me emotional. Like I think he was amazing. So that
Yeah.
was fun.
No, I'm glad you liked him. Yeah, Jack Rayner, and he's kind of this, I don't know, he's kind of this burnout, right? Like he tried to go to college.
Yeah.
He's basically just kind of living at home and just kind of spinning his wheels, and when the more, I mean, he's a really funny, fun supporting character, but then he has some real depth too.
Yeah.
And he has a couple of soliloquies that are just really, really impactful.
No, and that depth is, I think, probably what hit me the most in the movie, because like he makes this one comment about how he kind of more or less paved the way for his
Right.
brother to kind of fulfill this dream that he once had.
Uh-huh.
And I just think like I'm the oldest in my family, and I have a younger sister who is just artistically brilliant in everything she has ever done, and everything she's done are things that I did a couple years before her. And so like I did dance and it was okay. I was okay, but then she does it and oh my goodness, she's incredible and graceful, and like she shows so much emotion. And I did choir for a couple years. And it was okay, but now she's like auditioning for her college musicals, and
Oh,
her
wow.
voice is just gorgeous. And I told her, I'm like, if you start going into like directing and movie stuff, like I quit. I'm done. Like, but I feel that where it's almost like kind of unfair, where you feel like you did all this hard work to get into something, and you pass on all your knowledge to the young sibling, and then they just take off from there. And so
Yeah.
I really connected with that, and I think he portrayed that so well, but still showing that older sibling love, which I definitely
yeah.
feel. I love supporting my siblings, and I really connected with him on that.
Oh, good.
And you talk a lot about music movies, and I hope with this next segment we're doing, you touch on a few. But something I was thinking with this movie, and how often you talk about music in movies, this maybe in a future highlight we could talk about like favorite movie soundtracks. So not necessarily
sure.
like scores,
Yeah.
like the John Williams stuff, but more like kind of like Sing Street, because that music was fantastic. So I'd love to
Yeah.
hear more recommendations from you.
Oh
in
yeah,
that
no,
respect.
I think
Yeah.
it would be we could do it would be very easy to do a podcast just on great movie soundtracks. There are so many fantastic ones out there, and I, as I was thinking about what I wanted to do for this next thing, which we keep teasing, but I'll have to actually reveal here in a sec. All of my choices have fantastic soundtracks, so
I
that's
bet.
yeah,
I
that's
believe
right
it.
on. But maybe so okay, so let's go ahead and pull back the curtain here. So the first thing I have to say is that this is not my idea. So Travis Poppleton, who has not appeared on the podcast yet, but we're going to track him down quite soon. He is one of the other co-founders of the Utah.film website. In fact, more of a founder than either of us.
He is the founder.
Yeah. Right. It's a man paying the bills. So Travis, he and I had a discussion, gosh, this must be about a year ago plus, and he had just had this great idea where he has this conversation with friends where they exchange defining movies with each other, where, well, basically what they do is they have this conversation where they say, okay, well, tell me 3 movies that, like, if I want to know who you are, what 3 movies should I go see? And so they're not necessarily your 3 favorite movies, and they're certainly not like what you think are the 3 best movies of all time or anything, but it's kind of like, you know, if I want to know who Dani Hatch is, and I just met you for the first time, what 3 movies should I go see that would give me a sense of who you are? And so Travis and I, you know, I guess he would just kind of do this, have this conversation with people, and then of course they would use them as references and referrals, and you'd go and watch the movies, and it was just kind of a way of checking out new recommendations and stuff. And so he and I actually had this conversation last year, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was just really fun to kind of, you know, force yourself to really think about how movies connect with you and why, and so it just seems like a really obvious, good way to, you know, early on in the podcast, you know, we're only a few episodes in, but to kind of give our audience and to give each other an opportunity to kind of get to, it's a getting to know you exercise is effectively what it is. And so for the rest of this episode, the plan is for Dani and I to present our 3 movies. And so I'm going to go ahead and pitch it over, Dani, to you first.
Yeah,
and,
sure thing.
And just what reassures me that you're totally on board with this is that you felt like you needed to make the same qualifier that Travis and I did when we had our conversation last year, which was that I can't just do 3. I have to have like an honorable mention. And so I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and let her rip.
Yeah, no, it's hard to narrow down, and especially like this runner-up that I have, this honorable mention. It occurred to me today where I was really thinking more about that question of defining yourself, because I think these films are also kind of my favorite films of all time. Because I have that connection with them, you know?
Yeah. No, it's logical. It definitely makes sense. It's just there's a distinction between, they don't have to be your favorites.
Yeah.
They should be movies that, you know,
you
I
should
feel like oh yeah, but I feel like by watching this movie I understand you a little bit better.
Yeah. And it's an effective conversation starter, because I got to learn Travis a lot through his picks. He told me his, and he got me into the Coen brothers. So,
nice.
It works very well. But my runner-up that I have to mention, because I think it defined my generation. I'm a little too young for the Harry Potter crowd. I kind of missed that one. The next big thing was Hunger Games.
Okay.
And that trilogy, because, like, you know, I was just perfect demographic for that, because there's kind of this trope with those dystopian female protagonists where they're all kind of vague, kind of very common. It's like the brown hair teen girl. It's like, oh my goodness, she's just like me. And, you know, in that whole genre, my favorite was Divergent. I loved that one a lot. But Hunger Games, you know, that coming out, reading the books and going to the midnight showings, memorizing the trailers because I had watched them a million times before seeing the movie, and you know, that was huge. And so just kind of thinking back on that and how, you know, that defined a lot of me, you know, my fired up attitude sometimes, where it's like, down with society, I'll take you all on with this bow. You know, there's something very, very, there's a huge fondness in my mind for those movies. So I
Yeah, that
had
makes
to
sense.
mention those.
Okay.
But down to my top three, starting with number three, on movies to introduce myself with. I chose Jurassic Park for the first one
Okay.
because Spielberg was definitely gonna be on this list. Like I said, I think I watched Indiana Jones more, especially when I was younger, because like it was a little more tame. Whereas Jurassic Park, my parents didn't want me to watch, dinosaurs eating humans until I was like,
Ah.
I actually hit 13. So, but that movie, just, absolutely incredible, terrifying, but exciting. Growing up in Vernal, like dinosaurs, that's a
Yeah,
big part
that's
of the
right.
area
That's
there,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And as a kid, I thought I thought I was going to do something with dinosaurs. Like, I read all the books, I knew all the names, like that was something I was really into my elementary school years. So that was big. And I also love Michael Crichton. So that's, I think it kind of sparked a lot of my feelings of like movie adaptations of books, because I have very strong feelings about that. In
Okay.
that, I think movies should be recognized kind of as their own thing because they're just so different from books. So, like, if you compare Jurassic Park the book and Jurassic Park the movie, they're totally different experiences, but I
Right,
enjoyed
right.
them both. So, and I think the big thing with this movie is just how it's so fundamental to how I feel about movies. I love a lot of blockbusters for this reason. I also have strong feelings with practical effects versus CG kind of stuff, and
Right.
the animatronic T-Rex is just terrifying, and it ages so well when you do
Yeah.
that. So, and then like the grainy look of non-digital film, like I don't know, there are just so many technical aspects of that movie that I love everything they did there.
If it's okay for me to react, and and,
Yes,
and this was part of our discussion too, is that we would kind of chime in with our 2 cents.
please.
And so, and I think you'll appreciate my 2 cents because I read the book, watched the movie when it first came out, years and years ago, and loved it. Positive experience, really fun, exciting, et cetera, et cetera. My lasting memory though is from, gosh, this must have been 6, 7 years ago, when it was re-released. I think it was a 3D or something. It was during that stretch
Ooh,
when
yeah,
So
everything was 3D.
yeah, so they had a special press screening of it for the 3D release, and my lasting memory was just coming out of that, just thinking, I had forgotten how good that movie was, like
Yeah.
because that it's good, right? I mean, it's obviously it's never been one of my favorite Spielberg movies, but I always have thought of it as a good movie, right? And I just remember coming out of that screening thinking, wow, I did not expect that. I don't remember that being so good. And I think for a lot of the reasons you mentioned, because even though it was made 30 years ago, it holds up. And the CG holds up, the practical effects hold up, the story is fantastic, the characters are well drawn, it's exciting, it's got it really. I'm glad you picked that one out, because that's a fun one. That was a good
Yeah, it's
choice.
so good. I can only imagine in 3D, like, especially because I was looking this up and it won Oscars for like the effects, but also for the sound. Like
Yeah. Oh
everything
yeah.
they did with the dinosaur noises, like, and in a theater just to feel that, like, oh, I can only
Right.
imagine, like,
Right.
so good, so good.
Excellent.
So, second pick is Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Aha.
But this is just the sweetest film. Came out in the 90s about this little chess prodigy, little kid, little 7-year-old, whose name is Josh. So he's not Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer is kind of this ideal chess prodigy that like Josh is always being compared to. So it's almost as if, everyone has this expectation of him to become hardened and super competitive, and that's just not Josh. And I watched this movie for the first time my freshman year at BYU, and this was my first semester. The film program there is amazing, and there were some good things going on, but it was also just really hard. It's kind of a little more competitive there, sometimes a little elitist sometimes, and I was feeling a little lost with that, and also just trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do with my life, And we were assigned to watch this film and write an essay about the editing, and which the editing is fabulous. It's beautifully shot. It's such a gorgeous film. But I walked out of there and I cried. I went to a bathroom. I went to like a little bathroom stall around the corner, and I sobbed afterwards because it felt like such an answer to what I was feeling, where it's like, I don't have to be like that. I'd always worked so hard to be top of the class, smartest kid in the room, whatever. That's who I was like all throughout high school. And, trying to figure out college and professional world, what do I want to do? And this movie just kind of showed me, like, I don't know how to say this exactly. It showed me more the kind of person I wanted to be, where I was just going to be kind of good and, maintain this innocence and just, be me, do what I want, and who cares what expectations of others are, and to always be doing the right thing. So I think it is such a great film about that childlike innocence, and it's just so pure. It makes me cry every time. It's such a good movie.
Nice. Yeah, no, so that's interesting because I remember it coming out. I can picture in my mind the cover or the poster or whatever of this movie. I haven't seen it. So
okay.
This may have to be a recommendation that I take from you.
This is your homework assignment.
It sounds like it, right? So no, because but I remember, like, I've heard of Bobby Fischer because he was like this famous chess prodigy that I think that his legend worked against him and he became very reclusive and all that kind of thing. And I think that's the idea of the title, is that
exactly
they're trying to find the heir apparent to this guy who had a troubled life. So I understand the context of it. But yeah, no.
And this is a true story as well. Like,
oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Josh was a real person, and this is another movie based on a book, but it's based on the book written by his father about this experience, and the relationship he has with his father is also very interesting in the movie too. So that's another thing to point out. Sorry, fun fact.
Okay. Oh no, that's very cool. and I mean, it's cool to hear about your reaction to it. In the sense that it's very relatable, not that like, oh, I'm so happy that you had this, emotional breakdown after watching this, but like, no, I mean, that's exactly, I think, what's so fun about this kind of exercise is that, this is a movie that, maybe I wouldn't go so as far as saying changed your life, but definitely, gave you an opportunity to just kind of see and recognize something that had been a struggle, and those personal connections are what makes movies so fun and make them, it's why, you kind of take a step back and, especially when you kind of get into kind of the hardcore fandom of so many different franchises and things, and you realize, what on earth, why do we care so much about this? Why does, so what if the movie doesn't do what you want it to do, and such a character is there or not there, or interpreted a different way, but there are good reasons that we have connections, and obviously you can take it too far, and I think a lot of people do, but an example like what you're sharing, I think, is a great way to articulate, the way that movies mean something. They have meaning, legitimate meaning. But okay, so now I'm excited to hear your number one. What's number one?
Well, number one is going to build kind of on this as well. I think I just have a soft spot for optimism and emotional drama kind of stuff. And this is, no, I'll say this is my favorite movie of all time.
Okay.
I love it so much.
All right.
It's Life is Beautiful.
Oh, good.
And just beautiful movie. And like, but it's just such a beautiful Italian film by Roberto Benigni. And he plays this Jewish man falls in love with this woman. They have a son who's like the cutest kid on the planet.
Right.
And this is during Nazi Germany era, and they are whisked away, the father and son, to a concentration camp. And to maintain, I think there's a theme of like childlike innocence here, because in order to maintain the innocence of his son, the father turns this camp into a game for his son to help him survive and to follow the rules and to ensure his survival. And I mean, it does have very great funny moments, but it's just so heartfelt. And I love this idea of how hard things can be turned positively. And
Yeah.
Protecting family is very important to me. And so I think, I really relate to that. Also, just kind of as a side note, Roberto Benigni is probably the most precious human on Earth. And if you ever need a pick-me-up, just like go on YouTube and search Roberto Benigni wins Oscar for Best Foreign Film, or even like the one where he wins Best Actor in 1999. Oh my goodness.
When he's jumping over the seats.
He jumps up on the seat. He's like steadying himself with, I think it was Spielberg. Like he's holding Spielberg's hand and he's running up and down the stairs, jumping up, and oh my goodness, I want to be that happy just about movies, about people, about life. Like I want that kind of happiness so much. And I think, he's the perfect one for this movie, right? To show that happiness of life, of family, and it's just, it's such a good movie.
Yeah, no, I have very fond memories of this movie. That was a really great one.
Yeah.
And it is funny because you really want to be tactful with the way that you describe it, because it's like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. A comedy about the Holocaust is like, well, no, it's not a comedy about the Holocaust. It's a drama about a man who uses humor to protect his son from the Holocaust, right? Like because that's what's happening, is that they're in this horrific situation, and the only way that this father can think of to protect his son from what's going on around him is to try to convince him that it's all a game and that it's all this, this fantasy, and it's that tension between the reality of what's happening and this bright-eyed little kid who you just, as an audience member, just want to throw your arms around and protect and shield, just like, it's so relatable.
Yeah.
It makes me think about Jojo Rabbit from a couple years ago, which is another, just an absolute favorite, and think of how the Holocaust can be such a delicate subject to approach. But Life is Beautiful is one of those movies, like Jojo Rabbit, that I think just does an amazing job of pulling off something that you really wouldn't think should work, but does so well. That was, good job. I can almost just say, I mean, I haven't seen Searching for Bobby Fischer, but I could just kind of say ditto to your list and say, oh yeah, great job. That's, that's.
And I think it sums me up. Like I don't know if I'm necessarily these kind of characters, but they're the kind of characters I want to be.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a good way of putting it. It gives you. It is nice to have. I mean, and here again, I think that's one of the great things about movies is that they can give you something to aspire to, right? That they can, put out a good role model or tell a story that gives you, the incentive and, maybe just a little bit of a boost to keep doing what you're doing in your real life to, keep it up. So no, that's great. That was that was a very good list. Not that I have to approve it or anything, but
but it is Josh approved. Yay.
It is.
No, I'm excited to hear yours though.
Okay. Well, so like with you, I need to give a caveat at the beginning. I need to make kind of a little contextual comment, because and I shouldn't be embarrassed by this, but I always am, because whenever people ask me like, "Oh, what's your favorite movie?" or they'll also say like, "Well, what's your favorite, what's your favorite band?" And I want to be able to say something really kind of cool and unique and sophisticated and all this, right? But my default answers always seem to be kind of these obvious, cliched, options. And so for example, like when people want to ask me what my favorite band is, it's really hard for me to not say the Beatles, because that was kind of the band that changed me from a casual music fan to someone who was into music, right? And
Yeah.
so it was kind of genesis for that part of my life.
Well, they say there's a reason why cliches are cliches,
Exactly,
They
exactly.
work, right? There's
Yeah.
there's something there.
And so with movies, it's really hard for me to not say Star Wars, like the original 1977 New Hope Star Wars,
Oh
because
yeah.
it was the first movie I ever saw in the theater as a baby. I don't remember seeing
Was it really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
my parents took me when I was about less than a year old, because it came out like 6 months after I was born.
Yeah.
And
Aw.
and so, I mean, they told me that I was afraid of the Jawas. Like that's what they said, was that I was scared of the Jawas. And so, kind of in the same way that you described the Hunger Games series, that first Star Wars trilogy is really like the foundation of my appreciation of movies and really pop culture, and a lot of the kind of the creative efforts, whether it's been drawing or photography or music or whatever, a lot of that was inspired by being this Star Wars crazed little kid, and so it's hard to not say Star Wars,
Yeah.
but at the same time, because it kind of evolved so far beyond that, I almost don't want to say it, because for one thing, I think that Empire Strikes Back is a better movie than the original, New Hope. But then it almost feels like, well, it's like they're kind of beyond movies. They're really kind of like this foundation of my creative efforts, which, maybe that makes it a better fit for this list than any others.
Yeah.
But I'm using Star Wars in its, at least the first trilogy in its entirety, as kind of my equivalent honorable mention.
Yeah.
If I'm being really honest, it all started there. But I chose three other movies that I think, maybe in conjunction with Star Wars, the same way as yours are in conjunction with Hunger Games, really set up kind of like this nice contextual, situations.
That's a great way to describe it. Funny, they're both trilogies. Just throw that
No,
out
no,
there.
I was, yeah. Oh, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess in vague reverse order, not necessarily because one is better or worse than the other, but maybe just this is the best order of presentation. Since I'm not choosing one particular George Lucas film, I'm going to use another George Lucas film, actually.
Do it.
So my number 3 is American Graffiti,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which came out about 1973. It was the last movie he made before he made Star Wars. Dramatically different movie, like night and day. You really wouldn't think that the same guy made both movies.
I didn't know it was
almost
him.
kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So.
But I know of it. I'm just surprised. Yeah.
Right. No, this so American Graffiti came out in the early 70s. It's set on the last night of summer in 1962, and it follows the comic dramatic exploits of a handful of close friends on this last night of summer before two of them are supposed to go to college. So one of them is still younger and he's going to be going back to high school. Two of them are getting ready to fly out to college the next day. And then the fourth member of the group is actually a couple years older, and he's this guy who never went to college, he's never left town, he's just kind of hanging around, and he's a hot rodder, and so he's a drag racer. And so the movie is just kind of built around kind of toggling between the different storylines and threads as these different characters encounter different people around town, where they're just kind of out driving around, getting in trouble, pulling pranks, trying to meet girls. And it's what's really kind of fun about it, and I think what makes it really interesting for this exercise, is that I have like relatable connections to all of the main characters, except for maybe one. And so it's been interesting over the years to feel connected to one or the other characters when I watch it, and even some of the other. It's really, it's hard to explain without jumping in and explaining every one of the storylines.
So this is the kind of stuff that you grew up doing?
Well, but that's what's funny is that it's not. I mean, because by the time I was a teenager, Dragging State was not really, I mean, we would kind of joke about it, but it wasn't really. It was anything like dragging, the main street in this movie. Yeah, and so there's just like these 4 separate adventures that are kind of happening simultaneously, but all kind of interwoven with each other, and it's amazing. Like, it's got this fantastic soundtrack that's all just kind of like late 50s, early 60s kind of stuff, and it's so well written and well acted, and it's really, what's interesting too, and again, this is something that I don't really connect to myself, but it's really a portrait of America right before it kind of lost its innocence in the 60s. Like, people, a lot of times they think of the Kennedy assassination as kind of the turning point for that's when the 60s began. But this was the more innocent kind of like where, getting in trouble was going and like pulling a prank, and it wasn't as heavy.
It wasn't like the heavy of Sing Street, right? Which is about the 80s,
oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like your problems, the problems of these kids in American Graffiti don't hold a candle to, if only we only had their problems, right? It was just kind of it was the problems of being in high school and not being as popular as you'd like, or not being able to go and get a date on the weekend, or having to deal with some local street gang who, really wasn't that threatening. And so there's definitely a sense of innocence about it, but there's also kind of, it's a coming of age movie because, these characters are kind of coming to a point where their lives are about to change dramatically.
Yeah. But those are all still struggles that are very, like, universal.
Right. No, and that's why they're so fun.
Like, I was talking about how I had my breakdown because I was, in that time, right, where I'm trying to, like, figure out those things that, everything's changing, so I can see the relatability.
Right. And so there are kind of things that are fun on the surface, like the music, and of course, I'm a big car guy, and so all these cool hot rods, are a lot of fun. But then it gets a lot deeper too. I mean, I remember at one point watching it, like right before I started my senior year of high school, and being profoundly depressed because all these characters are kind of like riding off into the sunset, and I had to go back to high school for a year. It was just, it was awful.
Oh.
Anyway, so American Graffiti, it is George Lucas, believe it or not.
Crazy.
Number 2, I wanted to choose one that was a little bit more contemporary because obviously there's a lot of movies that I watched as a kid growing up that are really big for me. But this one came out in 2013, and this was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Okay.
And so this was Ben Stiller, like I said, about 8 years ago now, and this one came out at the end of what I considered basically like my first real year of being a movie critic. It was the beginning of 2013 when I started writing more regular reviews, and I started doing the TV show on KJazz. And so it was the end of 2013 was kind of like that first year where I really kind of considered myself a film critic. And Walter Mitty came out that December and just hit me on so many different levels. And I usually don't concern myself too much with this, but what I found really interesting at the time was that it wasn't really that well received. Like, it got kind of, I think the Rotten Tomatoes score was somewhere in the 50s.
That's surprising.
And I remember just being befuddled by it, just thinking, what on earth are you people talking about? Like, what is your problem? So the movie is about this, 40-ish guy, early middle-aged, he's a dreamer, and so he spends a lot of his time kind of zoning out into kind of his imagination. And his day-to-day life is a little bit more mundane, but he's afraid to take chances and to make something of it until that all changes. He works at Life magazine in New York City, and he handles the film, like the literal film rolls from the different photographers. And a key negative gets lost, and so he has to head out on this journey to figure out what happened to this film negative, and in the course of doing so, finally kind of breaks out of his shell and takes some chances and becomes who he was always kind of meant to be. It's very relatable on kind of I wish I could overcome my fears and go and do these exciting things, so it's a lot of fun, and it's really fun to see Ben Stiller kind of do that. I think he really captures the character really well.
And he directed it too.
Yes, he did. In fact, I remember and I wonder if there's a little bit of cynicism here, but I remember when I saw some of the other responses to the movie, the criticism was, it's a vanity project for Ben Stiller. And it's like, oh, come on. Like, this has, good grief.
I wouldn't agree with that, because, so I'm surprised by the rating, because, everyone I know loves this movie. But I didn't.
Oh, yeah?
But it wasn't because, of things like that. It was more it just felt a little too silly for me. I mean, all my movie picks are, these, hardcore dramas and everything, so, and this was during an era where I'm all I think I'm gonna go into film. And I'm only into Oscar movies. And so, it might have also been, how I was at the time.
The timing. Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I wouldn't give it that low, because I think there are some great story elements here. And
no, it is.
And it's fun. It's super fun.
Oh, yeah. One of the biggest reasons I enjoy it, and there are more than we have time for me to break down here, but one of the things I love about it the most is watching this movie as a photographer. Because there are so many insights on what is important and what it is like to be a photographer and shooting and trying to, a lot of it without, I can't really give the context for this without spoiling, something kind of significant towards the end of the movie. But basically one of the key messages, at least that I took, is this idea that, with photography, sometimes you have to just enjoy the moment and not be so focused on taking the picture. And I love that, because it's so easy as a photographer to just camp out behind the viewfinder and to be separated from this world, and you have to be able to put that down and kind of, you have to live your life as well. And that's one of the things I really loved about what that movie said. So So Walter Mitty.
No, I can definitely see how that's a very personal connection there.
No, and I would, again, I don't know, I would say it is the best movie I have seen since I became more of a full-time, or at least more of an official movie critic. But in my career, quote unquote, it's probably my favorite movie. It's the one that, it's my favorite movie that I've reviewed, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay. Which leads us to number one, which is, I'm trying to think of where you even begin with this one. And even Star Wars aside, it still might actually be number one. And it's the Blues Brothers.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this one of the things that makes this movie so fun for me is the way that it has kind of paralleled my own life at different stages and evolved from one thing into another, because it came out 4 years after I was born. And so I remember seeing it as a child. And so really quickly, the movie is about two brothers who are ex-cons, and they are in a blues band. And so after one of them gets out of prison at the beginning of the movie, the two of them reform their old band in order to raise money to save the orphanage where they grew up. And so the storyline is about them tracking down all of their old bandmates and recruiting them, and then finding a way to put on a big show to make the $5,000 to pay off the tax assessment for this orphanage. And of course, along the way, they're criminals, right? They're crooks. They're good guys who just can't help but do bad things, right? And so but they're good at heart, right? And so they're running afoul of the law. The police are chasing them, and this country western band is chasing them after they steal their gig, and then the neo-Nazis in Illinois are after them, and so it's just this crazy, over the top, insane movie that is. It's crazy, but it's also deadpan. Like, it's really unique in that it's not a laugh out loud movie the way that a lot of other movies were at the time. And so it actually, I would say it's kind of ahead of its time in a way, because the deadpan humor that we're a little more used to now, when I would show this to friends years ago, sometimes it would be a little awkward, because it's like, okay, well, this isn't like your Three Amigos type thing where it's like these knee snapper, laugh out loud,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But anyway, so that's kind of the premise of the movie. And I saw it as a kid, and I remembered it primarily for, this is that movie where they have the car chase in the mall, because early on in the movie, the cops get after them, and in order to get away from them, they literally drive through a shopping mall. And it's this famous scene, and that's what I remembered it at, basically until I was a teenager. It'd come on cable. It's like, oh yeah, this is the movie where they drive through the mall. But then, as I became a teenager, I started to get more and more into music, and as I kind of got into like R&B and soul and blues music, the soundtrack to the Blues Brothers kind of caught my attention, and I started digging up. I was like, oh, who's John Lee Hooker, and who's Sam and Dave, and this is this guy, Cab Calloway, and all these different, Elmore James, and so I would start kind of going down these other little rabbit holes and learning about these different musicians. And so the movie became something even more kind of beyond that, where it was, I appreciated it because it was this zany, awesome, over-the-top comedy, but then it kind of fostered my love of, American blues and R&B and different things.
Well, that's kind of a fun thing with movies too. Sorry, I just want to comment on that idea. I think maybe that's why I can be such of a film nerd sometimes, because there's so much more to the movie than just what you're seeing, right? Like, who are the actors? Who's the director? How did they make that scene? How did they shoot it? What was their inspiration, right? So I love how this kind of sent you on that path to learn more.
Yeah. Oh no, and it's kind of unfolding more and more things, and of course, I think the thing that really cemented it, and like I said, might have put it over the top, is like the all-time number one. So after, at the conclusion of my teen years, I turned 19, and I put in my papers to, go serve a church mission, and get a call to Chicago, which is where the movie is set. And at the time, I was under the impression that I was going to go to Vietnam or I was thinking, I'm going to go to some cool exotic place and learn a foreign language. I'm going to spend 2 years just living off the land, and it's going to be this awesome, crazy, and everybody's going to think about, oh wow, Josh got sent here. And then I get the call to Chicago, and I'm thinking, oh, okay. Stateside, huh? Because unfortunately there was kind of this idea that, it's kind of lame to get a mission call to the States.
Yeah. No, that's something I could go on and on about.
Right.
I feel
right. But then it dawns on me, wait a minute. I'm going to Chicago, which is, and I just spent my life watching a movie about two guys in dark suits walking around Chicago telling people they're on a mission from God. That's weird.
Should have gone around with sunglasses on.
Oh yeah, no, and honestly, it was tempting. So, because people will ask me, they'll say, "Did you actually say the words, 'We're on a mission from God'?" And it's I could never bring myself to do it, because it felt like that wasn't, I needed to be legitimate as a missionary and take it seriously. But no, just kind of realizing that, oh my goodness, I've just got called to this. It was totally poetic and
totally
so,
perfect.
Yeah, and in the years since, Chicago has been a second home, and I've been back numerous times and been to blues clubs and hunted down Blues Brothers locations, and so it's very, very near and dear to my heart, both as a movie and as a city, and so it's really hard to think. So as fundamental as Star Wars is, the Blues Brothers might even be more so by this by this point in my life. So so those are the movies. So now, you've seen Walter Mitty. Had you seen the other two?
No, so I guess I have some
Aha.
homework assignments.
I guess I keep getting lucky because I only, I'd seen 3 of the 4 movies that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I'm starting to
So
think about it. I'm like, you know what? If it came out in the '90s, I saw it, but I'm thinking,
yeah,
no, I've definitely got my my homework cut out for me.
that's right. That's right.
Um,
Well, I guess this is par for the course right now, right? I mean, we're
yeah,
might as well get used to it now. It's
I
September.
know, I know exactly. No, I'm gonna use it to avoid doing other assignments like I should be, but
There you go. There you go.
but
And I,
that's us, That kind of, I think, sums everything up, don't you think? I think
well,
I
maybe
think
not everything.
no, but
It's at least a really good start.
no, it's a very, very good start. I think yours were very good picks for you, as far as, how much I know of you through our podcast episodes, Zoom calls, and
Right.
all that.
That's right. That's right.
But we're
Yeah.
really interested for anyone who's listening to put down your 3 movies and, say what you think of ours.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing. I think that I'd love to see what people come up with. I'd love to have this conversation with all kinds of different friends and family members. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that you and I could use it here. Thanks to
Absolutely.
Travis, right? Because we have to give credit to Travis.
Yes. No, absolutely.
All right. Okay. Well, I think that should probably wrap it up for kind of a special episode of the
Yeah.
Utah Film Pod. Thanks, Dani, and thanks to all of you for listening and taking the time to hang out with us a little bit. And just like Dani said, I mean, go ahead and drop us a comment, drop us a line, and
Please.
we'd love to hear from you and hear more from you in the future. So until next time, take it easy.